educated. It's just you got to work and put sweat equity into it.
Don't go out and do your first commercial deal by yourself. Do it with a mentor or somebody who has experience you can add value.
Just that one little piece of advice from your mentor can save you so much money. And I always overestimate of how long it's going to take, and I underestimate what we're going to sell at.
You need to focus on the only things that you can be great at.
Focus on the business, but do 10% more. 10% more with your wife, 10% more with your kids.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Commercial Real Estate Blueprint Podcast. I'm extremely excited for today's guest. We have Shawn Johanson. He's a commercial real estate investor and entrepreneur, all around awesome guy. We were at an event at this point, probably 3 months ago. And Shawn got up on stage and shared a little bit about his journey in commercial real estate, some super inspirational stuff that I want to get into. But yeah, he's just awesome guy, killing it in commercial real estate. So we're really happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the people who don't know anything about you, give us a little backstory of who you are and what you kind of do.
Yeah. So as you said, Shawn Johanson originally grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and started off working at GE Capital was kind of where all this came to life. I was doing second and third mortgages for pools and room additions back in the heyday when people could just fog a mirror and they got a loan. And so I don't know, maybe I was one of the people causing the problems, but we won't go too far into that. But at the end of the day, it was really cool to see people's houses that weren't even built yet that ended up being worth like $60,000, $80,000 more. And that's what gave me the bug. Like, okay, I think I could do this. And so we went out and bought our first rental property in 2005. Great time to buy. And so we ended up going to Arizona to buy it, which was kind of where I was doing some loans in that time. And I could see this certain city kind of going up. And so we bought a brand new house, put $2,500 down. Before it was built, same thing, $60,000, $80,000 in equity. We're like, yes, we did this. And so we started renting it out, and 2 years later, the market crashed. So luckily, though, in between that time, we said, hey, we need to figure out how to do this the right way. You know, we've watched Flip This House, we've watched all those shows, but it doesn't really tell you how to do it. And so we had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which a lot of people have, by Robert Kiyosaki. And he partnered with another group to offer education. And so that's what we ended up doing. We went to a 3-day free event on the weekend, which honestly, I was working like a ton of hours at GE because it was prime season. And I didn't even really want to go, but my wife was like, I'm going to go. And I was like, well, I don't want to miss out. So I went with, and it changed our lives. I mean, we signed up for his program. It was, I think, like $24,000 for like 6 classes. We didn't have that kind of money. And so we put it on a credit card and was hoping that we could make this work. And
that's such a cool story. The credit card thing, I feel like, is so relatable to people. Just like getting started in the beginning of business, you don't have money and you're kind of like betting on yourself. I definitely did that, especially when I switched over from a different brokerage to CityPlat because I wanted to learn. And, you know, I was paying for a lot of stuff, and I did that and kind of took a bet. So it's cool to hear that you did that too. And obviously it panned out. What made you, so you got into, you know, flipping houses, and then you were in the residential world, and you took the class from Robert Kiyosaki, which is, that book too, is like, everybody mentions that book. It kind of opened my eyes as well. It's a great book. Yeah. But what happened then to make you go from the residential world into commercial?
Yeah. So we did residential flips for, we started really flipping in 2008. I lost my job from GE Capital because everybody lost their job that was doing loans. And it was just the perfect timing for us to really just boost it because I got a little bit of unemployment. I was with the company for like 7 years, so I got some severance pay. So I was able to parlay that and use that to be able to live off of until we could actually start making money, which, as you guys know, it doesn't really start making money for 2 to 5 years, to be honest with you, because you're constantly reinvesting.
Yeah.
So we flipped some houses, we bought some residential, and we actually bought another package, $24,000 from from Robert Kiyosaki because we were actually making some money, and we're like, well, we want to keep going and learning more. And I think that's what's important in this business is you got to keep going, keep learning, because you can't always think that you know everything because this market changes. Things change all the time. And so we bought another package, and this one had a commercial class in it. So we took this class, and it was very rudimentary. It taught us, some of the terms. And so we felt somewhat confident, but didn't really know where to get started in this. And so we went to a symposium that Robert Kiyosaki was promoting at that time. And it had probably, if I had to guess, maybe 600 maybe different vendors in that area. And one of them was Donald Trump at the time because he was selling his courses. And they also had this booth by J. Scott Shiel, the Commercial Academy, which you had spoken about. And we went in to see his, I think it was probably like a 2-hour pitch. And it was just something about the way that he pitched it and taught it. It just made sense. And he, unlike other programs that we had bought that were kind of a scam, he just seemed like he was honest and knew what he was going to follow through with what he had said. So we bought his 3-day class. We took it in August of 2010. And at that time, he was pitching this new mastermind group that he had formed. It was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years old at that point. He said, there's only going to be 40 people, never any more. And we're going to give you access to me. I'm going to help you to see if deals are good or not. I'm going to create this community that you guys can talk within each other and figure out what works. And I turned to my wife and I'm like, we have to sign up for this. This will change our life. This will make it go even faster. When we have somebody behind us that's been doing this for 20 years and teaching, it's a no-brainer. We have to do this. But to be honest with you, I had such low self-esteem at that point and was so shy, which you probably wouldn't see from this video, that I didn't think that I deserved to be in that group. Even I was just a house flipper. I'm like, why would he choose me? And you had to interview to be able to get into this. And so I made my wife interview because she had started a business doing beer and beverage consulting, and she had a unique story, and she was always very personable. And so we got in, and that's just what kind of led us to the last 15 years we've been with the Commercial Academy, and we've done about 20 properties total, and it's just been a great career so far.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. There's a lot to unpack there too. And I think a lot of people, they are the number one thing that holds themselves back. And it's encouraging to hear somebody that, went through those same things, but didn't let it hold them back. And they still found a way. You guys, even before that, were spending 24 grand and what was it, 05? That's different than 24 grand today. That's a lot of money. And you guys put it on a card, you bet on yourselves. And I think if you talk to most entrepreneurs today, they would bet on themselves no matter what situation that they're in. And having education and background, like mentors and stuff behind you, like that's what's really going to help you win when you bet on yourself too. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, and like I always say too, is you're either going to pay for it in a mistake or you're going to pay for it in education. And going back to that first property we bought in Arizona, we ended up losing like 40 grand on that deal because we didn't buy it right. We bought it for appreciation, hoping, and hope is not a strategy. Yeah. And so we lost 40 grand. So I could have bought, almost 2 of those Robert Kiyosaki classes for that mistake. Now, if I would have gotten educated to start with, I would have known that you don't buy and hope that appreciation. You go and you try and force the appreciation. So
yeah, I think it's I think Alex Hormozy, who's obviously blown up, says something very similar. He says like you can either pay for it with time or you can pay for it with just like money. And he's like, if you can pay for it with money, you can just accelerate your career so quickly. Yeah. And I mean, even in 15 years, what you guys have been able to accomplish is like absolute, is pretty wild. You're doing obviously very well. So you were in the OG, the original group of Commercial Academy. I'm curious, like who else was in there? You said it was it really 40 people at that point, or?
I don't think it was quite 40 people. I think there was probably around 30 people. And to be honest, there was only like maybe 2 or 3 people actually doing deals when we got in it because it was so new. Kevin Whitnauer, who's one of definitely the OGs of the Commercial Academy, was there. 2 brothers by the name of Frank and Anthony Gianovi. They were there also. I think they were the originals. And then there was Dr. Len and his beautiful wife, Barbara, who were also there. I think there was a couple other ones, that maybe one other, but they're not in the group anymore. So I believe I'm like the 4th or 5th oldest member now in the group. So
That's so cool.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is that what now is called like the Diamond Inner Circle? Is that basically what you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay,
So that's
cool.
what it was pitched as, the diamond. And now in order to get into the diamond is somebody has to leave it, and you have to be a platinum member to get into that program. So it's a great program. Like I said, I believe we could have done this on our own, but it wouldn't have went as quickly, and we wouldn't have had as much confidence, and we probably would have made other mistakes. So it was just amazing to be able to have somebody basically in your pocket on the phone to be able to call and ask questions if you just didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah. So talking about that, knowing that the people listening are either maybe they're doing their first deal, or maybe they're doing their second, or they're transitioning from residential, so they've got some of the real estate skill set, but they don't know anything about commercial. What would you tell them to do in terms of getting coaching, getting help, getting advice, getting a mentor? Like, what path would you take, knowing everything you know now, but let's say you're starting from nothing?
I think there's multiple ways to be able to do it. I mean, obviously paying for a commercial academy, coming to there, I don't get anything from pitching it. It's just such an amazing group, and Scott does such a great job in teaching that I would recommend something like that. But, if you can't afford it, then it's figuring out who do you know in your network that you want to be. You don't want to, if you're losing weight, you don't want to go get your advice from somebody who is 40 pounds heavier than you. You want to go to the guy or the girl that has lost weight before, or, whatever. So that's what you want to do, is you want to find somebody who's doing or at a place where you want to be, and then offer your services to them. What can I do to help you? I want to be your bird dog. I want to do this. I want to go raise money for you. And so if you don't have the money, it doesn't mean you can't do this and you can't, be educated. It's just you got to work and put sweat equity into it. And I think it's a great way. Even if you go to the commercial academy, I still pitch to partner with somebody who's a veteran that you like, and just say, hey, I want to do the first deal, because you can learn so much from somebody who's done it for 15, 20 years versus muddling through it on your own. And you can do it on your own, but why not do it with somebody else? It's so much more fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what we say. Like, don't go out and do your first commercial deal by yourself. Do it with a mentor or somebody who has experience, you can add value. Don't worry about the equity in the beginning. Just do it for the education, for the learning, because that over time is going to be so much more valuable. And from what I've seen too, commercial it's kind of like, seems to be like an exponential curve. It's like you might start off with your first deal and not make any money off of it at all. You just learned. And then your second deal, you might get a little bit, and then you can get some more. But, once it starts snowballing, I've seen people's snowballs get very big, and, they obviously they do very well. So I'm curious, I might be remembering this wrong, but I think this is something that you talked about. And we were on a coaching call Tuesday night, so a couple days ago, with Commercial Academy. And Kevin actually mentioned this. He was like, some people want to, when you start out, you want to know how much money do you want to make on a deal? What's your minimum? And he said some people have $100,000 minimum. Some people have $500,000 minimum. Some people won't do a deal unless they make $1 million. Some people won't do a deal unless they make $5 million. And if you're just starting out and you're in the residential world, hearing that they'll only do a deal if they make $100,000, I mean, that's awesome. Because in a flipping world, from what I've seen, 50 to 60 grand is like really good. So I'm curious, was it you who mentioned that you only do deals if you can do $1 million profit on it?
At now, I typically, that's what my threshold is. When I started though, one of the other OGs in the group, we were kind of struggling, like, well, what is a deal? Like, we know what constitutes a deal from looking at it, but we didn't know from a financial standpoint of what it was. And this guy said, if I can't make $500,000 off the deal, then I don't do it. And that just, like, the light bulb went above the head. And I was like, that makes sense. I can go off of that. And so for the longest time, that's what it was. And I raised that up a little bit now because of the different climate, that we were going in. We didn't know if the market was going to crash, or if it's not. We still don't. And so right now it's just like, if I can't make $1 million, and of course that we bring investors in, so that $1 million might not all be for me, but $1 million profit total.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So speaking of your first deal, can we talk about that? How you found it, how you took it down, and just go into your first deal?
Yeah. So we joined the Commercial Academy in 2011 as a Diamond member. And I remember this very vividly. Scott, we were bringing deals to him. We're super excited. And my wife, actually, we were running her business out of a house. And she was growing so much that we actually had an employee in the master bedroom closet working. So you can imagine it was pretty packed in there. And the city came by and said, you can't run a business out of here anymore. You got to find an office somewhere else. So we were on the hunt to be able to find an office. So we brought these 2 condo units that we were going to buy to the commercial academy, to the Diamond meeting. And we started pitching it to Scott and saying, yeah, we're super excited. We can buy it for, I think it was $250,000 per unit. It was about 3,000 square feet total. And we're like, okay, this is going to be perfect for us. And he's like, no. He's like, I love where you're coming from on this, but this is your opportunity. Banks love owner operators that buy properties. So you're going to be able to finance this fairly easy because of that. He's like, here's your opportunity to either find an office building where you can plug your business in and have tenants around you to be able to pay your mortgage for you and to make money and help them raise value, or buy a building, put yourself in, and then get tenants. So we started looking for something like that. And amazingly, where my wife and I met, we met at a bar doing volleyball. Right adjacent to that was an office building that had been vacant for 2 years. It was 29,000 square feet and built in, I think it was mid 80s. And so we went and looked at this building, and I think it was on the market for 1.1 million, somewhere in that range. And it was middle of winter in Minnesota. And if you don't know, in Minnesota, it gets really cold in the winter. And so we were just about to go look at it. And the manager for the bank that owned this property, because it was foreclosed on, forgot to pay the heat bill. And so one of the sprinklers busted and filled the bottom level with about, I think it was maybe about 2 feet of water. To us, that didn't really matter because we were going to rip everything out and redo everything for my wife's business. But from an economic standpoint, it gave us leverage. So we went in with Scott's help. He gave us a lot of great information of negotiating. So instead of paying that 1.1, they lowered it down to 900 after they found out that, and they cut out all the sheetrock and everything. And we ended up getting it at $625,000, which was just a little bit over what we were going to pay for those condos that were only 3,000 square feet. Now we're getting almost 30,000 square feet of space. So we have room to grow. We have room to bring tenants in to bring more cash flow. I think the amazing thing was when we were negotiating back and forth, we were asking the bank to finance it for us too, to kind of do seller financing because they owned it. I think we originally offered 5.5% interest rate, and they came back and countered us at 6. And for us, we were like, yes, and that doesn't, I guess now it sounds like a good rate, but back 5 years ago, that didn't. But at that time, it was a good rate. And so we brought it back to Scott and we're like, this is a great deal. We're going to take the 6%. He's like, no. He's like, go back at 5%. And we're like, but Scott, we already offered them 5.5. They came back at 6. There's no way they're going to go to 5. He's like, trust me. And so we listened to him and we did it. And sure enough, they took it. So just in that, we would have taken 6. We got 5. Just in that alone probably saved us almost the same amount as what we pay Scott for the Diamond Inner Circle in that year. So just that one little piece of advice from your mentor can save you so much money. And I could point to so many more things that happened during that time.
So basically, to recap, you guys seller financed it from the bank because it was foreclosed on. You guys were able to negotiate, was it like $400,000 or $500,000 off of the deal because of the issues with the building? You got a really great rate. This is your first property. The bank was kind of taking a little bit of a risk on you too. And then my bigger question is, since you didn't do an SBA loan, how much did they care how much occupancy that you guys had as the business's owner occupier? Did they even care about that since it was just seller financing?
No, just because, they wanted to get it off their books because it was costing them to be able, they couldn't lend as much out because they had this on their books. So they loved that we were owner operator, even though we were only taking 6,000 square feet of the whole building. They didn't care.
Did you guys put any money down? And if so, did you raise it? Since, obviously a big obstacle for people just starting out is capital. So $600,000 is relatively cheap in the commercial world, but still, if you got to put up 20%, that's a lot of money for pretty much everyone. So I'm curious, how did that play out?
Yeah, great question. Because we were able to leverage some of my wife's business models and everything like that, and working with Scott on some creative ways to do it. We didn't raise any money, but we ended up actually getting a check back at closing. I think it was somewhere around $6,000 that we got back at closing. So we basically put zero down. So we leveraged some of their banking relationships. I think it was through Bremer bank that they were doing in Minnesota to be able to borrow some money. And then we put that towards the down payment. And then we got some credits back from the seller because there was stuff wrong with it. And to merge everything together, we ended up getting a check at closing for $6,000.
That's awesome. And so do you still own that deal? And did you fill it up, or did you guys fill it up and then sell it? Or
Yeah, so it took us about 2 years to fill it up, but once it was filled, we were cash flowing somewhere around $200,000 a year off of it.
Wow.
Obviously, including what my wife was paying on her side of it. And so we cash flowed pretty much the whole way. We owned it for about 11 years. My wife sold her company, and we felt that it was a great time to sell at that point. So we sold it, probably had about 1.5 million into it total with all the improvements that we had to do for tenants coming in and for her. And we sold it for a little over $3 million 11 years later, plus the cash flow.
Wow. So you said it was making $200,000 a year. That's insane. So you bought it for $600,000, put no money into it, and it's making $200,000 a year. So that one deal, you know, they talk about one deal, one time, change your life forever. That one deal would retire just about anybody, probably making a lot more than most people make listening to this podcast. You know, let's say you're making, even if you're making six figures, like $100,000, $200,000 a year, that's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it took some time and it took some capital. That 1.5 million we did have to pay out of our pocket to be able to do, but you don't always have to do it out of your pocket. You can raise the money from friends and family. We've done that on every other deal other than that one. Or you could, leverage the bank, because if you have a great tenant that comes in, you can say, hey, Mr. Bank or Mrs. Bank, we have this great tenant. They have good financials. Will you loan me money to do the tenant improvement? And for them, it's just raising the value of the building anyways. So they will most likely loan up to 80% of that. So there's lots of ways to be able to leverage to be able to do it if you don't have the capital yourself.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I know this is kind of ties into a question I was going to ask before about the $1 million, only saying you'll make $1 million on a deal. So for somebody like myself, you talked about before we started recording, you wanted to talk about kind of the mental aspects of this. Me hearing that, and I'm sure a lot of people hearing that, almost automatically think, you want to make $1 million on a deal, but there's just not that many out there. There's not many deals out there like that. Oh, you made $200,000 on a deal. There's not really, that's just a crazy example. And that's just like that's my natural first thought. And I know that's probably a lot of people's natural first thought. So like, how do you, well, one, I think, do you think there's a ton of deals out there like that to be had? And then two, kind of talk to us about the mental side of that.
I think that one was a little outside of the realm of, what we've done since then. Most of our stuff has been retail. That was really our only office building. And it was a unique situation because my wife was going to put her business in. But a lot of entrepreneurs need an office. So it does work for some people. So I'll tell us a quick snippet of my second deal, which was a retail property that we bought that was bank owned also. And that one was cash flowing about $40,000 to start off. So when we bought it, it was cash flowing. What we were able to do is leverage that they wanted to get it off their books again. So there was 2 vacancies and we had them because they wanted their number for a price. And I think it was 1.64 million. But it wasn't worth that with the 2 vacancies. So what they said is what we will do is we will master lease those 2 vacancies, which means the bank is actually renting out those 2 vacancies for a certain amount every month for 2 years. And so we said, okay, we'll do that, but we want you to rent it out no matter if we rent it out again. So if we find a tenant within those 2 years, we're going to double dip basically. And they said, that's fine. We're okay with that. And we did do that. We found a dentist that wanted to sign a 10-year deal. We gave him $50 a square foot to be able to come in, which we leveraged the bank to be able to finance 80% of it because it was an amazing tenant. Dentists don't leave typically once they come in because they put all this money into their space and equipment and all this. And so we leveraged that. We had to do 20% of it that we raised from family and friends, and we brought other people into the deal. And we ended up raising that cash flow from 40,000 to 120 within probably about a year and a half or 2 years. We ended up selling it at the 2-year mark. And I believe that deal we made about 900 and some odd thousand, 970,000, I think it was. Because I remember talking to my wife, we had a check in our hand for 970,000. I was like, oh man, it would be our first $1 million check. I want to just put $30,000 in there so I can see that we had made $1 million, joking around, of course. But, and at the end of the day, because we brought partners into that, I think we made like maybe 250,000 off of that deal. So it's not always like the other one where you're making 200,000 in cash flow a year, but there are deals like that. So there's some that only cash flow 40 and then you turn it into 120. I've done deals that they cash flow 100 grand and turn it into 200. It just kind of depends on it. And to answer your question, yes, there's plenty of those deals out there. You just got to go look.
That's awesome. So how do you structure, I guess I had two questions talking about the retail center. So one, did you guys raise the down payment for that one since it was 1.65 million? And then two, how much equity do you give away if you already have the building, you're owning it, but you need to raise money for like tenant improvements? And for people listening, if they don't know what that is, basically if you have a retail center, the chances of a tenant coming in and taking the space exactly how it is pretty slim. Typically going to want to change it or something like that. So the tenant improvement allowance is just going there. It's basically renovation money, if you want to think about it that way, fit the space up. So how do you structure that? Because it seems like, I don't imagine giving away 50% equity to bring in some TI money, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I think there's so many different ways to be able to raise money on it. It depends. There's lots of people that do it different ways. For me specifically, I like to give it as little away as possible. I think that should be the advice for everybody. But to get the deal done, I'll give up as much as I need to get it done, as long as it still makes sense. So for me, a lot of the times, the most I've ever given up is 45% of the deal. The least amount that I've ever given up is probably 10 or 15%. So it varies. On this specific deal, I don't remember the exact, but I think it was somewhere around 40% of the deal is what we gave up for it. And so typically what I do is I work backwards. So I'll put in all the cash flow of what it is today, the depreciation, what the principal pay down is going to be, and I figure out what that's going to be for the next 3 years. And then I reverse engineer that and say, okay, I want to give my investors, somewhere around 15 to 17% is what we typically try to target for our investors. I think that's a great return for people. It's not too much where they're going to freak out and be like, this seems a little fishy that you're giving me 30% return on my money. And it's not too little where I can be like, well, I'm just going to go to the bank and get my 4% or 8%, whatever the bank's giving you at that point. And so we kind of try and target that. And then once we figure out what that is, we can kind of figure out how much we need to give away to be able to hit that sweet spot. So I might start with 5%. And then if it says that I'm going to give 23% annual return on their money, then I might say, okay, well, what does it look like at 4%? And so that's how I kind of try and figure out what it does. And then when I get into that 15 to 17%, that's when we say, okay, we found one. And then we go out to the market or to our friends and family and try and raise money. So on that deal specifically, I think we put about 50 grand down ourselves. And then we raised the rest.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I'd imagine it's probably, I'm not going to say easy, but easier to go raise money and say, hey, I'll give you 15 to 17% on your money. And of that, I assume you're talking about like IRR, like the annual return, not just like pref or something like that.
Yeah. In the beginning, I don't typically give prefs. I know a lot of people do, but I don't typically do it. Usually unless, the returns in the beginning are just so bad. But usually, like in the beginning, because there's vacancy, it's not cash flowing a lot. And so you might only get for year one, 5, 6, 7% return on your money that first year. But that's not what we're really shooting for. A lot of our deals, we're looking to, go in there, fix it up, whatever the problem is, then bring the tenants in, and then we'll exit it within 2 or 3 years. That's what we're modeling to be able to be done. So it's almost like flipping a retail center. And so what I pitch to them when I'm going out to them is say, hey, like, I know the returns in the beginning aren't going to be great, but overall, over the 2 or 3 years, this is what you're going to get. You just got to give me time to be able to get up to it. And as long as I set expectations ahead of time, people are okay with that. It's when you don't set the right expectations is when people get mad. And I always overestimate of how long it's going to take, and I underestimate what we're going to sell at and we're going to do, because I want to over deliver. And if I tell them I'm going to do it in 18 months and it takes me 36, they're not going to be happy. But if I tell them 36 and I get it done in 24 months, they're going to be ecstatic. And that's why I've been able to give, sometimes, in the range of 30, 40, 50% returns on their money, because I'm saying I'm going to do it in, 36 months, but I get it done in 18 months, or one I did in 13 months. And it just compounds that return then so much. Plus, I ended up selling for more than what I told them because I'm very conservative about my numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. I think expectation management is huge with investors, especially because like they're putting in tons of money here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're counting on you. And something a mentor told me recently was people can handle bad news, but they don't like surprises. They can't handle surprises. And, you know, you surprise people like, hey, I know I told you 15%, but you're going to get 8, you know, they're probably going to be pretty upset with you. 2 more questions about that deal quickly. How are you finding these bank deals? And 2, shoot, I lost my train of thought. But so how do you find these the bank deals?
So it was a lot easier, back in 2011, 2012, because there was a lot of foreclosure deals. So you don't find as many of them today. Now, there's some uncertainty in the market, so that could change. But if you're finding bank deals, a lot of the ones that we found, we went to a charity event and there was business bankers there, and we started talking to them about doing financing for us. And then before we were done with the conversation, we said, hey, do you have any deals, that you want to get rid of? We'd love to take a look at them. And so that's how we found a lot of our deals, was just networking with different bankers to be able to try and get it in with them, and we built relationships with them to be able to do financing deals because they already saw that we could perform. And so they ended up being our lending partners for years on. You can also go to different websites that in commercial real estate, when it gets foreclosed, it ends up going to usually receivership, which is somebody who manages basically the deal for the bank to make sure that there's nothing going on. And so they manage it for a while. So there's, I think, 3 big ones. One of them that we bought from before was C3 is one of them. I don't even know if they're still doing it or if they got bought out by somebody else now, but that was one of the big prominent ones back in the day. And so I think that's a good way to find those foreclosure deals.
Okay. Yeah. Before we get too far off the last example, I had a question that I want to know from, because I just, maybe for the audience and then also just personally, I was curious. So basically what you're saying is you figure out how much equity you give to get to that IRR. So like it might be 5% equity. So let's just say you gave somebody 5% equity. That means they're getting 5% of the cash flow. And then when you sell 5% of the profit, is that basically, and whatever that number works out to be to get the IRR? Is that basically what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. That was the first thing. Second thing is, do you have a custom spreadsheet you made to model that, or? Okay.
Yeah, and there's so many out there. I mean, if you're not techie enough to do it, there's ones that you can buy. You can go onto Upwork and have somebody way smarter than me, go and do an Excel spreadsheet for you and build it for you, as long as you know kind of what you want. I mean, now we have ChatGPT could probably do it for you too. So
yeah, that's true.
There's lots of different ways, so don't feel overwhelmed. I think that's one of the biggest things I get from a lot of residential people is, they say, oh, it's great that you've done this and all this stuff, but I don't know how to do that. I'm not a math major. I'm not, this, I'm not that. And it's like, we don't have to be. You be what you are, and how good you are at something is going to be amazing, but you don't have to be good at everything. You probably want to know a little bit about everything in commercial real estate eventually. Like, how do I read a P&L? How do we read these things? But you don't need to be a certified accountant to do these things. You find people on your team or you hire them out to be able to do it, just like you do with flipping. Like, I'm terrible at handyman stuff. I don't know how to tile a floor. I don't know how to lay sheetrock, but I was still successful at flipping houses because I just hired the right people. But I just knew I had to get it at a lower price than the people that did all the work themselves. And it's the same thing. You just got to figure it into your price that if I have to go hire these people to do it, I need to make a little bit more for this property.
It's like who, not how.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. One last question for that retail center, and when we want to talk about some of the Tony Robbins stuff you've learned. So that was your second deal, and you found that dental tenant. I was curious if you guys were the ones doing the leasing because it was your second deal. I know location matters for that as well, but do you recommend people that are buying their first, second, third deals to lease out their own properties?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a business that fits in there, for sure. I mean, if you're paying rent to somebody else, you might as well pay rent to yourself and let everybody else do it. So I don't see anything wrong with putting yourself into those buildings if it makes sense. If you have another business that wants to come in and pay you for that space, I don't think it makes sense to be able to do it. Bring them in so you're cash flowing and making a ton of money about it and then go find yourself another building to be able to put it in. So I think that, to answer your question on that, we did not do our own leasing. We typically did not do a lot of our own leasing to start with. We always hired brokers. They are your friends. Pay them handsomely. Don't cheap out on it. That's the biggest mistake that you can make, because you want them as part of your team. And now, because I've gotten more experienced, I know ways to be able to help them to be able to lease it, because I know that I'm not their only client and that they're going to, be servicing other people. So now I go and do Facebook ads. I do, different things to help them, but I don't cut them out of the deal. When I do a Facebook ad and I get a lead, it goes to them and I still pay them. Even if I were to negotiate everything without them, I would still pay them, because I want them to be there for me, because I know they're going to have access to tenants that I don't have access to. And that's how this one happened. Was a broker brought this tenant to us, and it was an amazing deal that we ended up making a lot of money off of.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think people just underestimate that, you need to focus on the only things that you can be great at. And, talk about different people in the group like Shawn Katona, who, he invests in people and markets that aren't even close to where he lives. And so you kind of have to rely on those brokers, but just adding value. We talked to Shay Yakovovich, and he is across the world, so he needs a good team, and hiring out the people that can really get you to the next level is so important. We talked about this a couple times, but wanted to ask you further about what you've learned from Tony Robbins and all the other mentors. It seems like you've been in a bunch of different mentorship programs and stuff, and want to talk about the mental switch of all the things that you've learned throughout your commercial real estate career.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been quite of a journey over the last couple of years. In my journey, I grew up a single mom who didn't make a ton of money. I saw her struggle most of her life. And so I saw that. And to me, I equated, because we didn't have money, that equaled why she was having a hard time, why she was sad a lot of the times and whatnot. And so most of my adult life, or even younger life, was always like, how can I make money so I can be happier? So how can I give my family more than what I was given? And I don't take anything away from my mom, because she was amazing and did what she had to do. But I think as parents, we always want better for our kids. And so in thinking of that, I put money first. And I said, okay, I need to make money. I need to be successful. And it became my identity. And thinking back to that, I would even say my self-worth was my net worth. So if I didn't have a good net worth, or if I failed on a property, that made me a failure. And although I don't regret that, because it made me who I am today, and to be honest, I didn't really fail at any of I did fail at some of my flip deals where I lost a few times, but then in commercial, I've really only failed at one deal over the 20, and that failure was only giving a 4% annual return because it took us longer than we thought. But all the other ones have been amazing. But I took that as something that was a personal attack on me. And so what ended up happening is about it was probably more like 4 years ago, my wife, exited her company. We kind of had this moment of like, okay, we made it. All this hard work that I worked so hard for, and all these goals that we had, we made it and hit our pinnacle of success of what we thought success was. But I was more miserable than ever. And I had really bad anxiety, which I had never, ever had that much anxiety in my life. I used to pride myself working at GE. I did collections. I worked for Pizza Hut, running my own store, working 72 hours a week. And I could plow through it. That was my badge of honor. And I think a lot of guys, especially, we take that as a badge of honor, of that we work really hard and we bury our feelings down. Well, what happened was, after burying them for 40 some years, it has to come up at some point. And it came up in anxiety. It came into a point where half of my face felt numb half the time. I started having dizzy spells. So I went to like a bunch of doctors to try and figure it out, and couldn't figure it out. And eventually, in going through the Tony Robbins stuff and just learning why we do the things we do, I realized that I had put so much stock on safety and certainty throughout my life, because I didn't have a lot of that when I was younger, that it was causing me this stress, because I always looked at everything of, I have to be safe. And if I couldn't control the situation, it just drove me crazy, and it made me feel terrible. in the end, and not even being able to enjoy my successes. So what I've really been on a mission to tell is all you young people sitting out there thinking, I want to do this. I want you to do it too. I want you to create your massive wealth of whatever that means to you. But I want you to do it in a way that's healthy and not put money first. Money is a tool, just like a screwdriver or a hammer. It buys time. It buys time with your family. It buys time with your friends, and it buys experiences to go enjoy those things with it. But it is not happiness. I know it sounds cliche. It doesn't buy it. What buys it, or what happiness to me is, what I figured out is the people around you, the connections that you make, that whether it's your wife, your kids, your mom, your dad, spending more time with them is what really creates happy moments if you think back in your life. And so focus on the things that make you happy. Don't worry about the money as much. And I know it's easy for me to say now because I have money and all those things, but I'm just trying to prepare you so that when you get to the level of where you think you're at your pinnacle of success, you can be happy. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years is stop putting money first and use it for what it is. It's a tool. You wouldn't use a screwdriver to go make a pizza or to flip a pizza. So use it as a tool to get you to your happiness or to be able to buy those time with your family. But even if you don't have money, go spend it. And another last thing that I'll end on is something as business owners, we are constantly educating ourselves. We're reading books. How can I be a better business person? How can I hire the right person? How can I do this? But if we just spent 25% of that time reading books on how can I be a better spouse? How can I be a better dad? How can I be a better person just in general and being happier? Your life would be so much better, and it would buy you so much more happiness than spending another time reading another book about how to be a better business person. So if you can do anything or remember anything that I taught you today, I think that is the most important thing I can tell you.
No, that's huge. And I think that comes back to being like, people say like, what's your why? Why are you doing all this? And if it's just for money, then you're probably going to end up finding out, like you said, you hear everybody say that even if they make a bunch of money, they're not happy. So I think a lot of people listening probably have similar whys. For me, it's like, I want to, like you were saying, I want to build a portfolio so that I can spend time with my family, especially when they're little, my wife and my kids, and help serve the people around me and do that well and use money as a tool. So I think that's really cool that you mentioned that. I think that's massively important.
What I would say to you is, in thinking of that, you don't need to build that wealth to spend more time with them. It helps to be able to do it, but you can still find time to spend time with them and to do it. Don't shortchange yourself of trying to put all your time into your business to get to that goal, because there's always a new goal and you're always going to want more. You're always going to do it. Find the time today to build that and to keep the relationship, because those kids grow fast. Mm-hmm. I've got 11 and 12-year-olds now, and it seems like they were just the same age as your kids. And I spent a lot of that time building my business and, not spending as much time with them. And I look back on it, I'm like, man, I wish I would have spent more time with them. And it's, like I said, it sounds so cliche, but it's so true that it doesn't have to be all the time. Still focus on the business, but do 10% more, 10% more with your wife, 10% more with your kids. You'll be happy if you do that.
100%. I agree. I think I'm sure there's people out there who can relate to that, but that's like one of the biggest challenges and struggles. Jesse probably sees me with it. It's like balancing, like, all right, I want to spend as much time as possible with my kids and my wife. And I also want to build my business so that I can spend more time with them. It's like a cycle. It's like balancing it. Like, I don't want to spend too much time to where I'm not making money and providing, but I also don't want to be, spending all my time in business. So that's a big struggle. I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's hard.
Well, that's why I say, spend 10% more time, 5% more time.
Yeah.
And when you think about a day and, that you're awake, that's really not a lot of time, but it's more than you were given before. So if you start thinking about it in small chunks, it doesn't seem as daunting. Like, how can I fit this extra time in there? But, when your kid is coming to you after school to tell you something amazing, and you're thinking about all the busyness of the day, just taking that 5 minutes to just unplug and say, you know what, I can still think about that later, but don't think about it. Because I did that. They'd come home, they'd be telling me something amazing, and I'd be listening to them, but not really listening. I would be thinking about all these other stressors I have today. And it's like, no, just unplug, just put that aside for 5 minutes, and just be present with your kid and enjoy that moment with them. I think that's one of the big things. Is in the past, I've always had a hard time enjoying the good moments because I didn't think I deserved them, to be honest with you. And so now I've been very intentional about when I have a great connection with somebody, or I'm with my kids and something's amazing, like they're giving me a great hug, and I just soak it up and just really be in the moment and be like, this is amazing. Just enjoy the moment. Don't think about anything else and just really be present. And honestly, the last probably 6 months or more that I've been practicing this, it's made a huge difference in my life. And so I don't think you don't have to take every single minute of the day to do this. It's just, like I said, 10% more. Anybody can do 10% more.
Well, I think you hit it on the head there when you said intentionality. Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we get in the weeds, we get in the busyness of life, and we just want to I could just do, let me just knock out this one more thing, and it causes us to be distracted a lot of times, and then we don't have our structure. Graham and I have our time blocks, but I'm traveling this weekend, and then we'll be gone next week, and a lot of times the structures that we put in place for ourselves can kind of go out the window. Curious to see what your advice is for people like us that are entrepreneurs who are trying to make structure for themselves. Like, how have you in your life won in the structure of, I don't know. I guess my question is essentially how do you structure your time, and what advice could you give to somebody like us?
Yeah, this is another thing I've learned from Tony is I think you guys are already talking about it, chunking your time down, but he talks a lot about categorizing it and what's most important to you. And so for me, and kind of what Tony talks about, is you start with yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of anybody else. You won't be able to take care of your business. You won't be able to take care of your relationship with your wife because you'll be so tired that you won't be able to have that time. So take care of yourself first. That should always be number one, whether it's mentally or physically. Take the time to do that. Number two is your wife. If you don't put the time in with your wife now to continue the relationship, especially when you have kids, when they become 18, you'll be strangers. You won't even know each other. And unfortunately, I am seeing more and more at my age of 50 of my friends getting divorced now that are entrepreneurs because they didn't put the time and effort into being a good husband. And so one of the things I committed to in December was Janet, my wife, comes first. It doesn't matter if the kids, so when I walk in the door, I used to go straight to the kids and we'd be playing, and then 5 or 10 minutes later, I'd be like, oh, hi. And it was like we were almost strangers. But now it's like, even if the kids come up, I say, hey, thanks for, coming. I'll give them a quick hug. But then I go to my wife and I give her a big hug and a big kiss. And we ask each other now, because we both committed this, of what can I do to support you this week? I think that's such a powerful question that we can ask. And so once you go through your wife, then it's your kids, and then you can go to your immediate family, and then it's work. So it's prioritizing your week when you're looking at, well, what's most important this week to me? Well, those 3 things should always be the most important things. Then you can start working on work and all those other things. And that's how I try to manage my time is, what's the most important things I need to get done this week? Those 3 things, and then what's important on the work. So then I schedule those times to be able to do it. And you can be flexible. Sometimes, like you said, you're traveling and something happens or you get an important call, but then jump back in right away and make sure you're not just ruining it. It's kind of like a diet. Mm-hmm. If you quit every time that you cheat, you're never going to lose weight. But if you cheat and you're like, okay, I'm getting back on the horse tomorrow, and you do good, that's how you lose weight.
That's so good. Prioritizing. Yeah. That is huge. Yeah. That's huge. So you said it's wife first, then kids. And what was the third? Friends and family?
It's you first.
Oh, yeah, you first.
Then wife, then kids, and then the rest of your family or whoever you want to put after that, or friends. And sometimes that changes this week. If you're going to do a guys' weekend, with your friends, your wife is still first. You call her and check in and say, hey, honey, I love you, or whatever you want to say. But your kids might be only just 5 seconds of, hey, on FaceTime. And then it's your friends, and you're taking time away from the business and doing all those things. But if you're thinking about business the whole time and you're out doing it, you're not even enjoying the time. Why are you even there? What's the point? Yeah. So it's prioritizing what is most important to you that week, and then being flexible. If something emergency comes up, then do it. But then find the right people that can cover you when you're gone. If you don't have the money to be able to pay for it, ask one of your buddies, ask your mentor, hey, I'll do the same thing for you. Swap. I'll do the same when you're out of office. I'll take over for you, vice versa, so that you can really be present.
That's so good. And speaking of, Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
going to add one thing. Sorry. You had said about work and how things come up. I think sometimes we also believe that something is very important and needs to be done that second, but it really doesn't. If you really thought about it, it could wait 2 hours. It could wait till the next morning. But in our brain as entrepreneurs, we're like, we got to be there right away. We got to take care of it. We got to, otherwise it's going to explode. And so I think we're lying to ourselves. I just had to get that out.
Yeah.
No,
I think that's great.
That's such a great point. And then you just have to be okay with the way that people act that way. Cause there was a period of time where I put my phone on do not disturb, but focus on certain things. Be like, you never answer your phone. Your phone is on do not disturb. It went straight to voicemail. It's like, yeah, well, I'm trying to focus on getting these things done or spending time with my family. And like, people don't respect that nowadays. So you have to be disciplined in that. So that's awesome. But speaking of taking care of your family, this is something you told at Commercial Academy. I think it's super inspiring. Will be a great story kind of to end on, talking about what you did for your mother. Tell us that story and just share it with our audience so they can kind of be inspired, because it definitely inspired me. That's probably one of the biggest. That's probably the most memorable thing of that event for me. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a blessing, and I feel so grateful. So I shared with you before that my mom was a single mom, struggled growing up, and so as I saw her struggling, my whole why, and that's what I talked about at the Commercial Academy, is if you don't have a strong enough why, you're not going to do any of this. You're just going to put the book up on the shelf, or the program that you're buying, and then you're just never going to use it. You're going to read it once and never do it. And so for me, my why was my mom. I knew she wasn't going to have any savings when she got to be older, and she wasn't going to have the comforts that a lot of us have because of her sacrificing for me. And so I used that to be able to fuel my success. I knew I always had to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to be able to make that money and give her a better life, to either maybe buy her a car or to pay off her mortgage, or whatever it was at that time. And through the amazing mentorships that I've had and the risks that I've taken, I had the blessing and the pleasure to be able to, at Christmas, it's probably been about 10 years ago now, that I was able to pay off my mom's mortgage, and I gave it to her for Christmas. And so it was just such an amazing moment to be able to give back to somebody who had made so many sacrifices for me. And so I feel blessed. It brings tears to my eyes of thinking of that moment of just being able to give her something that I knew was such a blessing. And because I was able to pay off her mortgage, she was actually able to retire at that time. And so it was just amazing to have that moment. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
yeah, that's so cool. And it inspired me because my parents are at retirement age and they're still working. They've done fine financially, but they're still working. So I'd love to be able to do that for them. And you can do it with one deal. You just got to find the right deal. So it kind of fired me up to think, wow, I could do that. And that would really make a big difference in their life. I just turned 30, so I've got plenty of time to make more money. But they're at retirement age. So I think that's really, really cool, really inspiring. And ultimately it kind of just goes back to like, what's the point of doing all this stuff? That was your why. I encourage listeners to think about what's the point of what you're doing? Why are you doing all this? Why are you interested in commercial real estate? Why are you building a portfolio? It's obviously one of the most important things to think about. So yeah, we appreciate you coming on here. It's been awesome, super awesome, inspiring episode. If people want to find out more, connect with you, what's the best place for them to do it?
Oh, that's a good question. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Shawn Johanson, SHAWN, JOHANSON. That's probably the best place to reach me. I'm working on a few things. Haven't committed 100% to it, but we have big goals for charitable stuff. And so I've started a YouTube channel. It's called, I believe it's Shine Your Light is what it is. I believe that as somebody who's went through a lot of pain and a lot of things, but really gained a lot of tools from it, that I can tell those stories and give other people those tools like I've done today, so that they don't have to suffer as long as I did in it. And so I feel like if I can shine that light and tell stories and give tools, then hopefully I can save some other people pain and time.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. So connect with him on LinkedIn. Go check out his YouTube channel. Subscribe. Man, YouTube is a grind. So good luck. I've been doing it for like over a year, and I think I just hit 700 subscribers. It's a grind. So good luck on that. It's awesome though. I think it's a great great tool and great thing to be building. So especially if you're
Yeah.
using it to inspire other people. But thanks everybody for listening. And this has been another episode. We'll see you in the next one.